As the strength and power of the early church grew, so did hatred against it. Persecution increased in Jerusalem, forcing many of the early believers to flee to surrounding areas. But God in His mercy moved the early disciples out of Jerusalem so they could take the good news of Jesus into the world. One of these special servants of God was named Philip. As he was teaching and preaching in Samaria, an angel spoke to him and said, "Journey south to the region of Gaza by taking the road that goes through Jerusalem." He obeyed the call and began the dangerous journey through the very city he earlier was forced to flee. On the same road towards Gaza, he came upon a chariot belonging to an important dignitary. He was an Ethiopian, in charge of all the treasures of an extremely wealthy kingdom, and he was returning from one of the Jewish feasts in Jerusalem. The Spirit of the living God called to Philip, commanding him to approach the chariot. So Philip ran and caught up to the Ethiopian. As he approached the chariot, he heard the Ethiopian reading from the book of Isaiah, one of the books of the prophets. Philip asked him, "Do you understand what you are reading?" The Ethiopian replied, "How can I? I have no one to help me understand what is written in it." With that, he eagerly invited Philip to come sit with him in the chariot. Not only was the Ethiopian reading from the book of Isaiah, but astonishingly, it was a passage specifically talking about Jesus the Messiah. God had perfectly arranged for Philip to explain this important passage that, years before, had predicted the coming of Jesus. They began reading together. Like a sheep he was led to the slaughter, and like a lamb before its shearer is silent, so he opened not his mouth. In his humiliation, justice was denied him. Who can describe his generation? For his life is taken away from the earth. The Ethiopian asked Philip, "Who is this man who quietly and willingly gave up his life?" Philip began to boldly preach to him the good news, how Jesus was the sacrificial lamb described in the passage, who had offered himself up to be crucified on the cross, and who had been slain for the sins of the world. He explained all about the salvation through Jesus, and the Ethiopian believed. As they continued along the road, he came upon some water. Eagerly the Ethiopian said, "What's to prevent me from being baptized right now?" The Ethiopian walked with Philip down to the water and was baptized. In this act of faith, he was washed clean from sin and became a disciple of Jesus the Messiah. As soon as the Ethiopian came up from the water, Philip was miraculously taken from that place and transported to another town. The beautiful gospel of Jesus continued to spread. The Ethiopian was overjoyed and went home a changed man, and God moved Philip to his next mission in another town. The kingdom of God was expanding, and God's salvation was reaching to the very ends of the world.